This tutorial covers the CDI Livescan Enhanced Workstation. Before we start the CLEW software, we want to ensure that we're connected to our VPN. In my case, this icon in my message bar indicates that I have a connection to the VPN. Once we've ensured that we've got the connection to the VPN, we want to make sure that our scanner is plugged in and connected to the computer. Once those two things have been accomplished, you need to locate the CLEW icon, which will be on your desktop. Looks like a fingerprint with a magnifying glass. It says CLEW underneath. Double-click the CLEW application, and that will bring up the CLEW user interface. Go ahead and click it to maximize to full screen because it's easier to see. The CLEW application is built as a standard Windows application with various menus across the top: File, Settings, Scanner, and Help. If you look at the File menu, your only option is Exit to shut down the software. Under Settings, we have Configuration, Field Tab Mode, and Test Connectivity. We'll take a look at Configuration first. Under Configuration, we have Auto Archive. This, although it says Archive, it deals with the deletion of applicant records. So in this case, archive transactions older than 30 days. We can use the up and down buttons to increase or decrease the number of days. Alternatively, you can highlight the number and type in a number of days that you want to use. Down below that, run archive process every, in this case, 0 hours. We can set this up so that it runs the archive process to check every 1, 2, 3, up to 99 hours. So we'll leave this at 4. Under hours, you have the ability to set hours or minutes. We'll leave this at hours. Archive draft transactions. We will get into what draft transactions are in a moment. Draft transactions are those transactions that are incomplete either because they're missing data or because they're missing fingerprints. Delete archive transactions. This is for applicant users. You'll want to put a check in this box. I can't put a check in this box at the moment because I'm not running as administrator. So to solve this problem, I'm going to cancel out of the settings. I'm going to close the CLEW application. I'm going to right-click on my CLEW icon, and I'm going to say Run as Administrator. Again, the software is going to launch. It won't look any different. But now when we go to our settings and configuration, you'll notice that I can actually put a check in the delete archive transaction. For normal operation, you do not need to run as administrator, but for the purposes of this training demo or changing configuration, you will need to be running as administrator. The next tab is our fingerprints tab. Auto capture. The minimum fingerprint quality on a scale of 1 to 1,000 is 350. Now you can set this up or down as you see fit. The minimum acceptable image at this point has to achieve a score of 350, otherwise you have to recapture the image. The higher you set this, the more difficult it's going to be to get a good image. The lower you set this, the higher the likelihood that you're going to put a poor quality image into the record, thereby increasing the potential for your rejection rate. Require core is always checked. Every fingerprint needs to have a core. Require delta is unchecked. This delta is not always present, so leaving this unchecked is not going to cause any problems. Minimum minutia, that's the minimum number of identifiable points, 20. And again, you can set this up or down. 20 is a good average point to start. Timing and verification, force capture delay, 3 seconds. This is the minimum value you can set. As you notice, your down arrows grayed out. You can increase the time. Delay between captures, 1 second. This is the minimum delay. As you can see, the down arrow is grayed out, but you can increase it. The recommendation is that you leave it at 1 second. Longer than that, you'll have hesitation between fingerprints. Sequence checking should always be checked yes. Allow override after 1 recaptures. If you set this to 0, you will never be required. You will have the ability to force the capture if you get a rejection. 1 is the standard. Again, you can set this up if you want to force more captures before you can force accept a bad quality or a mismatched image. This flip hand indicators is if you want to reverse the position of the left and the right hand, which we'll get to when we get to the fingerprint capture page. Photos, we really don't need to do a whole lot with this because for applicant purposes in general we will not be capturing photos. If you go to advanced, you have your default destination agency ORI. In this case, it is defaulted to DOJ. This should not be changed within the state of California. Your default ORI is your ACN number, your Applicant Communication Network number. In my case, this is P0558. If you have a magstripe reader, the serial port will show up here. And when you swipe a California driver's license, it will create a new California applicant record. Enable debug logging simply tells the system that we want to capture more information in the event that we're trying to troubleshoot a problem with the system. Once you've made your changes, you can click on Save, and those changes are now saved into the configuration. Going back to Settings, Field Tab Mode, you have the option to tab to all fields or only to mandatory fields. All fields, of course, will take you to each and every field, whether it's mandatory or optional. The mandatory fields will only take you to those fields that are required by the Department of Justice. The last menu option here, Test Connectivity. You should always attempt to connect and make sure that your VPN connection is good. What you should see is 3 green check marks: the app submitter, the federal submitter, federal response receiver. Now this will be different depending on your system. If all you're doing is California DOJ, this is the only submitter that you will see is the G2 App FTP submitter. You will not see the federal. If all you're doing is federal, you will see the federal and the federal response. You will not see the G2 App FTP submitter. In this case, all connections are successful, so we can click OK. On the scanner menu, you have the option to reinitialize the scanner should it become disconnected. So you simply connect, reinitialize scanner. It doesn't tell you anything, but the scanner has now been reinitialized. On the help menu, we have the about. The about screen will tell you the current version, who the support contact is and their telephone number, and we'll give you the copyright information. Also on the help menu is check for updates. So if we click this check for updates and wait a few seconds, the system will communicate with the server and determine, as in this case, that CLEW is already up to date, so we can click OK. Had there been an update available, a yellow box would have appeared across the top of the screen here, just above Create New Transaction, telling you that an update is available. Exit CLEW to install the update. At that point, you would simply exit CLEW, and when the update was done installing, it would automatically restart the CLEW software for you. Now that we've covered the drop-down menus, you have a number of ways that you can create new records. You can either click on the new transaction at the top, or you can select one of the available transaction types on the main screen. This system is configured with both California App and the FBI departmental order. Depending on the configuration of your system, you may see only California App or you may see only FBI DOCE. In most cases, you will see both. So for the purposes of this tutorial, let's create a California applicant record. Once the record is created, you're going to get a record box that starts with the agency information. If you're familiar with the state of California, you know that each applicant has to bring in a request for Livescan form. It is a DOJ 8016 form, and on it, it will have the agency information. This is our demographics tab. We also have a fingerprints tab, responses, and history, which we'll get into in a bit. User is Mark I. Date 10/27/2015, LSID is PE1, and the type of transaction is app. So we're going to do a record as though we were capturing for a security guard. In that case, the code is A0522. That will automatically from the table bring up California Security and Investigative Services, Sacramento. Applicant type, we get a drop-down list. We can also simply start typing SEC and security guard will come up. We type in our free-form applicant title. As you see, while we can see the destination agency and the submitting agency, we can't change them here. Down at the bottom, we have our billing number. So we put in our billing number. In my case, PSP G2 Solutions Incorporated comes up. And when I tab off the fields, you get the standard box that DOJ requires telling you that misuse of this billing number is your responsibility and that you need to be absolutely certain that you're using the right billing number. For the fingerprint roller certification number, my fingerprint roller certification, if the number is too short, you'll notice that the field is red. If it's too long, you'll notice I can't put in more than 6 characters. When I tab off this field, we're going to automatically move to the next section, which is contributing agency. As you notice, the agency collapsed. There's nothing to enter on this form. We have our mail code, so we'll go ahead and we'll tab down to our person details. In this case, we're going to create an applicant test record. So we'll give him the last name of applicant, first name of test, middle name of record. Suffix, you can type a single letter and it will bring up the letter that most closely corresponds. In this case, junior, I typed a J. Or you can drop down the list and you have quite a few that you can select from, so we can select the third. Date of birth, you have the option to either go to a calendar, or for quicker entry, you can type in the month, a /, the day, a /, and the year. And when you tab off the field, you'll notice that it turns it into 1967 instead of just the 2-digit year that I put in. Again, with gender, if I type M, I'll get male, although it is a drop-down table. With height, for someone that is 5'10 or 5'11, you would put in 5'10 or 5'11, just like that. For someone who is between 1 inch and 9 inches, you need to put in still 3 digits. So if the person is 6'2", you will put a 602 so that it is still 3 characters. You'll notice that if you don't put in 3 characters, the field is red, indicating that it has a minimum and a maximum length of 3. Put the 2 back in and it accepts the value. The weight, 185. Eye color, again, you can simply type H for hazel, or you can drop down and select from the list. Hair color is the same way. Place of birth, if you know the state, you can begin typing it and it will show you the state. In this case, I typed TEX. Drop down the list and you have a whole list of places that you can go and look at. But in this case, Texas. For a U.S. state, your country of citizenship is going to be the United States. If it does happen to be a different country, then you can go and select that country from the drop-down list. Place of birth is a free-form city. Citizenship documented, if it's a U.S. citizen, which it should be, you're simply going to type Y for yes. You'll notice the applicant tracking ID or ATI number. The AP corresponds to the first two characters of the applicant's last name, in this case AP. The third letter corresponds to the first letter of their first name, in this case T. The 300 corresponds to the date, 10/27/2015 is the 300th day of the year. The S indicates that the software doing the capture is CDI software, in this case CLEW. The 790 is randomly generated. Now, if this is a resubmission that you did not originally capture, you can put in the original ATI number from the rejection letter into this box, and DOJ will treat this as a resubmission. Once you're done with the personal details, you're going to notice that you have no more yellow boxes here, which would denote mandatory fields. We can go through and we can look at all of the various fields, but they are not required in order to move on and eventually submit the record. The one remaining mandatory field is the payment type box down here at the bottom. Payment type, no matter what they give you, is always going to be on account. Once we select that, you'll notice that the pen next to the demographics on the tab turns to a green check mark indicating that you have filled in all required fields and that the demographics record is now ready for you to go to fingerprint capture. So if we go to the fingerprint tab, the first thing we want to notice is that we are using the Watson Mini Finger Scanner and that it is initialized. We have a start button ready to go, which further indicates that our scanner is working and ready for us to be able to capture fingerprints. Now you'll notice that there are two sets of hands, a left hand and a right hand, and each hand has 5 fingers. If you need to annotate a finger as being amputated or in some other way unprintable, you have two options. If you go to a finger and you left click, it will automatically put an X and put the word amp corresponding to that finger's position on the boxes down below. If you made a mistake, you can simply click that again and it will take that amputation away. If it is not amputated, but rather bandaged or in some other way incapacitated, you can right-click on the finger and you get a list of possibilities: bandaged, deformed, missing at birth, scar, tip amputated. Best possible, you don't have to select because the software will put it in for you automatically. That works for any of your annotations that you might need to do. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and capture a record. To do that, we're going to go ahead and click on Start. And when we start, you'll notice that the hands indicate that it wants both the left and the right thumb. And what this is indicating is that it wants plain images. So you're going to take the applicant's thumbs together and you're going to put them down on the platen until they capture. Once you hear the beep, you can remove the fingers. The next two fingers are going to be the right index and middle finger. And then the right ring and little finger. Moving on to the left hand, we're going to again start with the left index and middle. And then we're going to do the left ring and little. Now you'll notice that my ring finger is substantially longer than my pinky, So all I have to do is bend at the knuckle a little bit to get both those fingers on there. Now it wants us to roll our fingerprints, and that's why we've got a dot on the right thumb. It's asking us to roll the image. In the capture area, you're going to notice that you have a bullseye target here. What this suggests to you is that you want to center the finger in the platen. So we're going to center the thumb, and then we're going to rock off to one direction and roll the fingerprint back. With the next finger, the index finger of the right hand, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to rock off, and we're going to roll the finger back all the way across the platen. Now once you get to where you're comfortable with the Watson scanner, and you know where the finger is going to start, you can speed up capture by starting the finger where you need it to be, and then just simply rolling across the platen, which speeds up the entire process because you don't have to do the rock and roll. Once you're done, you have a full set of 14 images. You have your 10 rolls and your 4 plane impressions. Now, if for some reason that you don't like a particular image and you need to recapture it, like if I didn't like the way my right ring finger looked, I can right click, I can either view, capture, or annotate. In this case, I want to capture, and I'm going to capture a rolled image. So it goes back, the hand indicates that I'm going to be doing my right ring finger. I simply recapture my finger, and the new image goes in the place of the original image. If I run into a problem where I have gotten a bad sequence or I've captured a poor quality print, if I go to capture and roll, now this is asking for my right middle finger. I'm going to roll my right index finger. The software will immediately come up and tell me that I have a sequence error. It will tell me that the finger being requested was the right middle finger, and the finger that I actually rolled matches my right index finger. So I'm going to say recapture, and this time I'm going to roll the correct image. And once again, now my right middle finger, the new image has been put in place. Once the record is captured and you've got all of your fingerprints, you're going to notice the fingerprint tab at the top has the same green check mark next to it that demographics has. At this point, you're ready to submit the record, so you can simply click on Save and then click on Submit. Once the record is submitted, you have a small icon down here, which is a purple right pointing arrow, telling you that the record is being submitted. You also have the option to go to the History tab and see Submitting Transaction, Uploading Transaction, Transaction Submitted, Act Received, Response Identifiers, Transaction Submitted, No Response Expected. So at this point, you have a green check mark telling you that the entire record has been submitted. Once the record has been submitted, you can then go back, click the Home button, and that will take you back to this screen, and you've completed a California applicant record. Now, if you have a record on the system and you need to look at that record, you can go back and you can select that record and it will reopen it. Once you've reopened the record, you'll notice that the demographics is locked and the fingerprints are locked. So your only options for this record would be to come to the menu at the top if you needed to resubmit the record, or if you wanted to export to a different location so you could send it to somebody, or in the more likely case, so you can delete the record. In this case, we're not going to do anything. This is how you would resubmit this record. Clicking on resubmit will ask you, are you sure you want to resubmit this transaction? You'll simply click yes. Now, your demographics have become editable. You can see what is in the record. You can go and you can check the person details. In most cases, though, the data will not be changed. As you can see, the original name cannot be edited. Only the demographics can be edited. Looking at the agency, the original AO code cannot be changed, but you can change the type and the title. Most resubmissions are due to poor quality images. So in this case, we're going to go straight to the fingerprints. We will say that the left finger has been amputated, and then we will start our fingerprint capture. Important thing to remember, particularly when you're doing test records, is that if you mark a finger as being amputated, as we did with the left ring finger, you have to remember when you get to that part of your plane impressions that you marked it as missing, therefore do not capture it. It will confuse the software. So now we've got our right, and we'll simply go through a full capture as we did before. And again, recall that you marked the finger as being amputated, so when we get to that point, you will notice that it now wants the pinky. Don't, particularly when you're doing practice records, remember that you said that there was no finger there. And then you're done. And you have your one finger down here that has been marked amputated. Now, if for some reason you mark this amputated in error, you can simply click it, right click, go to capture, go to roll, and capture the finger. And then you would also come down to this record and go to capture, and you're going to have to recapture all four fingers. So there's your index and your middle, and your ring and your little. So if you make a mistake, it is an easy thing to fix that mistake. And again, once you're done, you'll notice you have two green checks. You can save and you can submit the record. Now, I want to point out over here that the record that we resubmitted is this applicant test record. And it has created a new record up here with the same name but today's date, and it's now submitting. You can see the purple right pointing arrow. If you go to the History tab, you can see transaction is submitted, acknowledgement was received, and now we have our green check indicating that the record was submitted properly. Again, we can go back to our home page with all our records closed. Now, if we want to create an FBI record, if you have a system that's configured with federal, we simply click on the federal, the FBI DOCE. DOCE is the transaction type. You'll notice that this record is substantially different from a California. You don't have agency details. You have far fewer boxes. Again, your yellow fields are mandatory. The presence of yellow boxes indicate that there's mandatory field data in these boxes. So we'll simply go ahead. We will say test record applicant. Email address is important because if you want the applicant to get their response electronically via email, you will put in their email address in this box. If they do not want their response electronically, you will leave this blank and their response will be printed and sent to their mailing address. As with the DOJ, hair color, gray, height 6'02", eye color hazel, weight 185, race white. You do have drop-down lists that you can select from here. Birth date is the same as the California. You can either use the calendar to select the date, or you can type the date in manually, typing in month / day / year. When you tab off the field, it will turn that year into a 4-digit year. Gender, male. Place of birth, again, Texas. TEX will bring up Texas. And that satisfies all your mandatory fields on this particular screen. Tab again and we get to the address. When typing in the residence address, it is very important that you type in the street address, a comma, the town, a comma, the state, a comma, and the zip code. That satisfies all the mandatory fields here. There are no mandatory fields on the alias screen. You can enter alias if you do have someone that has an alias. On the last screen on agency, retain an FBI master file is typically going to be no. Go back to fingerprints. We're going to start our fingerprints. It's exactly the same as the California part of the process. Capture your plain thumbs. Capture your index and middle, your ring and your little, your left, index and middle, I'm sorry, your left ring and little. Now, in this case, it wants us to roll. You'll notice that you need to pause just a little bit in order to get capture mode. If you start rolling right away, you notice that it doesn't start rolling. You have to pause for a second and roll across the platen. Sometimes if you get too quick, you'll notice that it's not capturing. If you don't like the image as it's being captured, you can roll the image back and forth as many times as you need in order to get to the point where you've got an image that you're happy with. Once you lift the finger, the capture will be accomplished. But while you're rolling the finger back and forth on the platen, it will simply keep capturing until you have an image that you like. Once you're done, you can save the record again. Notice you have a green check on fingerprints, green check on demographics, and you'll notice when I clicked on save, the applicant's name appeared over here in your transaction history, along with the TCN number generated. If you look at the icon here, this icon indicates that the record is still in draft mode because the record has not been transmitted. That means basically that you can edit all of the data on the demographics, you can recapture the fingerprints. As soon as you click on the submit button, you'll notice demographics and fingerprints locks. You can no longer make changes to either of those tabs unless it's a resubmission. You'll notice that our purple arrow that was pointing to the right is now a blue arrow pointing to the left. This indicates to us that the system is waiting for a response. So here it tells us it's awaiting one response. This response can take anywhere from 5 minutes to a number of hours or even possibly days to send back the response depending on the background of the applicant being fingerprinted. In most cases, this is going to come back in anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. If there is an error, it will typically come back much quicker. And in most cases, you'll get the error back in sufficient time that you can allow for the applicant to be able to be refingerprinted before they even leave the site. This is only in the case of FBI. DOJ records do not get responses. They are fire and forget records, so you can't go back and recapture them right away. It's going to be some time before they get a letter from DOJ telling them that it's been rejected. Once this response has been received, this check, this arrow is going to turn into a green check, and you're also going to get a little email envelope, and it will pop up the response information. Again, that can take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour typically. Now, you don't have to wait for this response to come in. You can go back to the home screen. This is still going to sit in the background. It's going to be looking for that response. This concludes the tutorial for CLEW. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Chris or Mark at G2 Solutions. Our toll-free number is 866-202-2342. Or you can email us at g2info@g2sinc.com.